I feel like I'm stuck in a bad dream that I can't wake up from. You know, hearing that from one of my close friends is like a little bit heartbreaking, which is why I wanted to actually make this video. Without a doubt, people all over the world right now are dealing with a massive mixture of emotions and insecurities, and I am sure that there's going to be some people that watch this and, you know, due to the sort of fixed dialogue that they've decided is reality, you know, they will take certain things in this post out of context or just completely disregard it. What's up, everybody? Now, I don't normally do videos like this. In fact, my channel is more dedicated to teaching people or inspiring people how to live a happier, more fulfilling life. And in fact, one of the easiest ways to be depressed is watch mainstream media, right? So if you want to be happy, don't watch the media, don't watch the news. That doesn't mean be ignorant. I don't watch the news at all. I get sometimes things that I can't avoid because I work in social media and it comes up on my feed, but what I've found is there's certain people that love stressing out about the news, and if there's something that's going to directly affect me, they'll let me know about it. And you know, I can learn about that through having an actual conversation with a human being, not by just constantly scrolling through negative articles online, where there's no shortage of at the moment. But you know, at the same time, my channel, it is also dedicated to helping inspire and teach people how to live a life of more freedom. Right now, I feel like our freedom is being threatened. I mean, it goes without saying that most governments want to have the most control possible over their populace, and sometimes for good reason, yeah? But at what point is it too much? You know, at what point does democracy become autocracy? I woke up this morning to a message online, or saw a sort of post online from a good friend of mine, Jamison, which I'll go through in just a second. But I spent the last, all morning basically going up, looking through reputable news sources online, and I'm going to actually try and read that verbatim, word for word. So if you are going to make a comment, let's try and make it constructive. I was reading some of the comments that were left after even Jamison's post, and some of them were just bullying, closed-minded, aggressive, sometimes passive-aggressive. We're not going to elevate to a higher level of consciousness with that kind of thinking. We need to be open-minded. We need to talk to each other with compassion. The fact that online right now, because of what's going on in these mixed emotions, there's so many people, good friends, who are now being split apart because of different opinions or ideas or thoughts which are being fed to them from different sources. And there's so much fake information or misled or false information out there, or misinterpreted. It might be good information, but because of that internal dialogue and that closed mindset, the information gets twisted and then misinterpreted and fed on to the next person wrongly, or with a preset agenda. So don't let them divide and conquer us. Let's please try and make an effort in any comments that you make on this video to make them compassionate and from a place of love. All right, so as I said, the video has been prompted by a Facebook post that Jamison made. He is currently in Melbourne, which is, Melbourne, Australia, which is kind of known right now as the epicenter of COVID infection in Australia. And what he said was, "What's everyone's honest feelings about the state of emergency extension for another 12 months in Victoria?" Now, I'll just quickly read out some of the responses that, people saying things like, "What, is this happening, or are they just discussing it?" There's a funny one here, I'm not sure if you can sort of see that. It's Homer Simpson just slowly just going, what? Slipping back into the hedge. Next comment, "Just your classic case of shady government dealings. Dan Andrews announced the state of emergency will be in place for 18 months and lockdown restrictions will be extended beyond September. Furthermore, the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2018 only allows a state of emergency to operate for 6 months. The Premier, Daniel Andrews, said amendments are being made to change it." So being made, not even being. So the changes will most likely be approved as they're being rushed through Parliament. These sort of things are happening all over the world. Governments are using this opportunity to pass all sorts of laws which take away the liberty and freedom of a lot of people around the world, not just in Australia. This is something that scares me actually a bit more than the actual virus itself. But leaving little time so being rushed through Parliament, leaving little time for them to be opposed or scrutinised and backed with the agenda of public health and safety. I hope I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's a statement rather than a discussion. Next comment, 6 months to 18 months is a huge leap, and F. You can guess what that means. Yep, not ideal. 6 months of uncertainty was hard enough, but the prospect of another 12 months is devastating. I really feel, the pain for a lot of these people in Victoria right now. I made a comment after that saying, sounds like a joke. Pretty stoked I'm out of Australia at the moment. I am in a beautiful situation for what's going on. And Jemison replied, yeah, it's a total joke. I feel like I'm stuck in a bad dream that I can't wake up from. Hearing that from one of my close friends is like a little bit heartbreaking, which is why I wanted to actually make this video. So I'm gonna continue on with some investigating, because there's been a number of things that have just been impossible for me to ignore with what's going on back in my home country. I am a very proud Australian. I'm so grateful and blessed for the sort of upbringing that I've had. Australia, when I was growing up, was known as the lucky country, but I've noticed in the last 10 years, so this is something that a lot of people who don't know Australia in the last decade might be surprised to find out, but it's changing. Our government's been a complete joke. I don't know how many, in the last 10 years we've almost had just as many prime ministers, even though we're supposed to only have an election every 4 years. We've had like something crazy, like 8 different prime ministers in the last decade. And it's a whole different story, but I mean, even though some of those were only served a very short term, they get a pension package of $500,000 every year for the rest of their life, so that's like an extra $4 million the taxpayers are paying just for completely incompetent prime ministers that have been booted out of their seat, not even by the people, but by their own team, and then they've replaced that. So there's been prime ministers that we haven't even really voted in, which, how is that democratic? But anyway, that's a whole different story. Rather than just taking Facebook for face value, I actually looked into this and started researching, and The Guardian, which is a reputable news source, there was a number of different articles as well, but and I will leave in the comments below, I'm going to leave the resources that I've used to actually get all of this information. You can do all your research for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. In fact, do the research. I want you to do, because it's pretty crazy what's going on. So, the Victorian plan to extend state of emergency by 12 months prompts human rights concerns. Absolutely. Victorian law currently allows the government to declare a state of emergency for 4 weeks at a time and to extend that declaration for up to 6 months. The state government declared a state of emergency due to the coronavirus pandemic on the 16th of March and has renewed it 6 times in 4-week increments. The current state of emergency declaration expires on the 13th of September, 3 days before the 6-month time limit expires. But on Monday, the Premier, Daniel Andrews, said he would ask Parliament to extend the allowable period for a state of emergency to 12 months and then renew it, allowing Victoria to remain in a state of emergency until September next year. What if the people don't want to be allowed, Daniel? Allowing us. So thank you for allowing us to stay trapped inside our homes for the next 12 months. So first off, I just want to, talk directly to all of you Victorians. How do you guys feel about this? It's weird I lived in Victoria for a large part of my life, in Melbourne actually. And for me it's extremely concerning, but obviously I'm not there anymore, and so I can only imagine. So comment below, let us know how you guys are feeling down there in Melbourne. But to fully understand the situation, let's have a look at the current situation in Melbourne as well. I looked up another article from another site, which heading titles "COVID rules in Melbourne, Australia let police enter homes without permission even smashing car windows. So there's been a number of cases already where car windows have been smashed and people being dragged out of their cars. Victorian police can enter homes without a warrant. So as a part of a new stage 4 lockdown restrictions announced this week, Victorian Premier Dan Andrews has cited harsher penalties for those found not to be following COVID-19 directions. At the direction of health officers, authorities in Victoria can now enter any home without a warrant or permission and take any action deemed necessary to slow the spread. Which apparently they're also allowed to confiscate whatever they want if they feel it is going to help spread the thread. You know, spread the slow the spread. So a couple of the newest restrictions that have been imposed on the Victorians. So again, a 6-week curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. across the entire Melbourne metro area, with only exceptions being work, medical care and caregiving. Outside those curfew hours, the only reason to leave your home are shopping for food and essential items, care and caregiving, daily exercise and work. Workers must show papers. Daily exercise can only take place within 5 kilometres of your home, cannot last longer than 1 hour, and can't be with more than one other person. You cannot buy more than 2 units of certain essential items, including dairy, meat, vegetables, fish and toilets. When outdoors across the entire state, masks are compulsory. So as if the first round of lockdown wasn't bad enough, Victoria once again is in the firing line. But what for? I mean, you know, let's actually have a look at some of the statistics. Yeah, because I got really curious once. I was like, man, things are getting crazy down there. Like, and so I needed to have a look at the numbers just to sort of, because I was assuming that maybe it's gone absolutely bonkers and out of control. But let's have a look at the actual numbers. So it surprised me when I looked up influenza statistics for last year, and last year was actually recorded as one of the highest counts of influenza on record in Australia. This year, for some reason, influenza's just disappeared, right? And of course, I understand people aren't out and all that sort of stuff, and we're being a lot more health conscious, but last year we had more than 310,000 Australians hospitalised because of the flu. So that's people that are actually hospitalised, 310,000, and over 900 of them died. So at the release of this video, which is near the end of the flu season in Australia, near the end of winter, currently Australia has had 25,020 cases of COVID. 310,000 is the flu, 25,000 is COVID. 19,598 have recovered, and 532 deaths. So again, 900 people died from the flu last year in Australia. So far, 532 people have died from COVID. So a lot less. And of course, I'm sure that there's going to be more, but this is at this point in, at the exact same time. So these statistics at this same time last year, this is comparing. And out of those 532 deaths, do you know what the median age was? 82 years old. I was curious then, I was like, okay, so what is the actual median age of death in Australia without, you know, without any of this going on? What was the median age of death in Australia? Ironically, it's 82 years old. Out of those 532 deaths, 430 deaths have been in Melbourne. All of them have been over 70 years old, and one over 100. All right, but strangely, influenza's just kind of decided to take a holiday this year. So again, something's not quite adding up. But I wanted to just sort of mention an article that I saw in the Sydney Morning Herald. It was actually a video that I saw that, you know, kind of just, it made me laugh, to be honest. It kind of felt like the governments or whoever's trying to push this agenda is trying to scrape from the barrel to really fuel that fear propaganda to try and make sure that people are being obedient. The article reads, "Think you have the flu? Question mark. It's probably COVID-19. New data prompts symptoms warning. Sydney-siders with flu-like symptoms have been warned, so this is a Sydney Morning Herald, have been warned that they are more likely to have COVID-19 than influenza. The flu rate in New South Wales is 10% of what it was the same time last year. In the video, you get Dr. Chant saying, at the moment we have very low rates of influenza circulating. So if you have respiratory symptoms or of cough, fever, sore throat, runny nose, headaches and pains, it's most likely because you've got COVID-19, not the flu. When I saw that, I was like, really? Is that really what's going on? But anyway, the same article also says, funnily enough, the latest New South Wales surveillance data also reveals the total number of people killed by COVID-19 and influenza this year, so this is together, not just COVID-19, is less than half the death rate of influenza alone over the same period last year, and just a fraction of the fatalities during the horror 2017 flu season, where there were less cases of the flu but more people died. Anyway, so that's, you know, that's in regards to, I guess, comparing stats with the flu and COVID. But, you know, there's been a few other things that this is kind of, you know, I've noticed in regards to this. It seems like a real massive shift or attempt for the Australian government to control the populace. One of which is the notion of going into a cashless society. Which, you know, I know for some people they don't like using cash, and that's fine, but we have to sort of consider all the people in our society and you know, the freedom to be able to use cash if you want it. You know, the cashless society sort of agenda has been, you know, the Australian government has been trying to push it for a number of years now. So going back to 2018, I'm not going to read out all these articles. I'll just sort of read the headlines just to get an idea. I'll put the links into the the description of this video, and you can look it up yourself, or you can just do a Google search. But 2018, one article read, Australia moves towards a cashless society. 2019, Morrison government proposes a $10,000 cash limit for Australians, saying that if you purchase something with cash over $10,000, you can go to jail for 2 years. 2019, Australia to be a cashless society by 2022. Now, if we bring that forwards to this year, a headline saying coronavirus could speed up the introduction of a cashless society. Australia moves to restrict cash and build up its surveillance state. I mean, think about this, you know, from a surveillance side of things, if every single purchase that you do, or every single transaction, like even if I wanted to give you $5 as a present, if there's no cash, we've got to do it through some sort of digital way, and the government is going to know about that. Why do they need to know about that, right? If it's a birthday present or just a gift to someone, you know, but then of course the whole idea is so that, you know, and it kind of touches on it here. There's an actual insert from the article here. Peter Bofinger, a former member of the German federal government's Council of Economic Experts, argues that coins and banknotes are actually an anachronism. So, anarchy. Cash is anarchy, you know, and impede the power of central banks. Oh, excuse me. Like the central banks need more power, right? So the big problem with paper currency is that a large part of it is used to facilitate tax evasion and a huge spectrum of criminal activities. I understand that, and again, you know, if taxes are being used properly, but it's not always being used properly. You know, for example, our prime ministers, the last just in the last few terms, there should have only been 2 prime ministers. We've had like 8, you know, and so rather than the Australian taxpayers paying $1 million a year for the rest of our lives for those 2 that were in term, we're now paying $4 million, so an extra $3 million out of the taxpayers' money going towards just 6 people for the rest of our lives seems pretty dodgy to me. But you know, and there's so many other things that have happened in Australia over the last few years, which is questionable as to what our taxpayers' dollars are being put towards. But anyway, that's a whole separate issue. But you know, and at the same time, when they're talking about, you know, a huge spectrum of criminal activity, just because something is legal, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. And vice versa, just because something's illegal doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. You know, over time laws change, and you know, they change because we realize that they impede, or they actually are doing more harm to, you know, particular groups or individuals or mass groups than good. You know, a prime example of that would be, for example, in Australia, marijuana, CBD oils, they're still illegal, and it's been proven that it's a medicine that helps so many different types of illnesses, and you know, the fact that it's still illegal in Australia to me seems criminal, but it's a law. You know, so again, just because something's illegal doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong, and we should have the freedom to be able to buy those things. But if we've got cash taken away, and the only way you can buy them is by, you know, having a paper trail, obviously that's going to make things a lot more complicated. So, although sure, I totally agree with trying to, you know, impede criminal activities. That's generally bad for the public. We also should have the right to decide. That's my point. Former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund and author of The Curse of Cash. The government's right to tax, regulate and enforce laws trumps individuals' privacy considerations. That's word for word. Do you agree with that? I don't. But hey, yeah. Alright, so the next article is saying a cashless society is not on the cards, Financial Review. Now, that's a bit of a play on words, because as you'll see from this take from the article, they're actually talking about cards, like plastic cards, so there's a bit of a double meaning there. Cashless society is not on the cards. Right now they're talking about an article that was actually posted 3 days prior, saying the article, "Coronavirus Hammers Nail in Cash's Coffin," accepts some clever PR from vested interests, including MasterCard, that suggests consumers don't like cash. MasterCard, like Visa, American Express and other cashless payment systems, have not moved during COVID-19 to offer free services, but have fanned fears to the advantage of their shareholders. MasterCard's share price is up 49% and Visa is up 42% since bottoming out on March 23rd, when a lot of people were like getting cash out and because of the fear of what was going on. So they've done some very clever PR work, and their share prices have gone through the roof. So MasterCard literally spread fake news last week with a media release regarding the dirtiness of cash. Yet the World Health Organization and Royal Australian Mint says cash is not unsafe. The move away from cash is not being driven by consumers. In fact, some 95% of Australians and New Zealanders want to keep their right to pay with cash, according to the Next Payments market research. So cash in the economy sits in the Reserve Bank pool for more than 24 hours to ensure it's virus-free. Cash companies like Prosegur may also sanitize it before it sits in again in an ATM canister. Meanwhile, an EFTPOS terminal may be tapped, touched, pressed, handled by hundreds of cards and people per day. The Royal Australian Mint says plastic cards, point of service terminals and pin pads can carry viruses and pass them on. The cash system, which safeguards our privacy and is the most reliable and surcharge-free way to pay, is being undermined by card and payment companies for their own benefit. Cash is safe, free and private, and we should keep it that way. Yet our government's really pushing to make it a cashless society. I mean, currently the Australian government is ranked as the 6th most cashless society on the planet, and they're really pushing to go towards the same way as, say for example, Sweden. Last year the federal government proposed laws to ban cash payments of $10,000 and more, threatening jail sentences of up to 2 years for people who don't obey. And then there's an article here from ABC on the June the 8th titled "What Australians Can Learn from Sweden's Move to a Cashless Society." So as Australia flirts with the idea of a cashless society after coronavirus, Sweden has a warning. Be careful what you wish for. Sweden is often cited as the most cashless country in the world. So key points from this article, I won't read it out, but the key points: a report predicts Australia could be cashless within 2 years. However, more than 500,000 Australians still have a bank account with no linked debit card, so no cards. They actually, and this is obviously the older generations, I would imagine so, who are still used to going in with their bank books and going in and actually taking cash out. And if that's how they want to do things, then that should be their right. One Swedish expert says moving too fast can have unintended consequences. So this is a quote: "During the COVID-19 period, these people have found purchasing goods and services difficult when some retailers have stopped accepting cash because of the dialogue that's been pushed by companies like MasterCard and Visa. Completely false dialogues." If that doesn't, I guess, really emphasize the direction our government's trying to go in terms of controlling our populace, then maybe you might have heard that our government, just like China, is now implementing facial recognition cameras and technology across the entire country. Certain articles, so the ABC again, facial surveillance is slowly being trialled around the country. The Guardian, Australia needs to face up to the dangers of facial recognition. Basically, it's sort of, we're going down a path where you won't be able to do anything without the government and corporations knowing about it. And that for me is, that's our privacy, our right to privacy completely gone. And that just doesn't sit right with me. Okay, so again, I'm really sorry if you find all of this a little concerning. My channel, as I said, it's normally really about trying to inspire you to live a happier, healthier, fulfilling, more free life. And none of this gives me joy or fulfillment. And but I do feel like our freedom's being our freedom is at stake at the moment, and that's why I wanted to make this video. So, do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? Please leave comments in the comment sections below, and again, please try and be compassionate and constructive. Any comments that are just rude and ignorant and unintelligent, I will probably just remove them. But I guess I just want to say good luck to all of you Victorians and anybody else around the world. I'm sure there's other cases around the world where similar things are happening. I know just a few days ago in Colombia, a 22-year-old nurse was shot dead by police because her brother, who had been caught outside of his home without a face mask on a couple of times, was going back to his house. Police saw him, chased after him, he ran into his house, closed the door behind him, and they shot through the door and killed his sister, who was a 22-year-old nurse. Like crazy, just because the guy wasn't wearing a mask a couple of times. I understand we've got to try and do what we can to prevent a spread of the virus, but I think there's a much bigger picture that a lot of people are missing because they're focusing on this message that we need to be, social distance, do what our government tells us to do, because they've obviously got our best interests at heart, right? Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, this is one of the biggest challenges of our time, and what will come of all of this, I don't know. I have hopes. I genuinely believe from the bottom of my heart that there are more good people out there, and there is more good in people than evil. And this is perhaps the shake-up that we need to really reflect and start elevating to a higher vibration and a whole new level of consciousness where we're not just looking out for number one. You know, number one is all of us together, and you know, looking out for the greater good. And you know, so I do believe that good will prevail, and don't give up. Together we can make this a better world. And you know, there's I guess a saying I've always liked that's helped me through some tough times, which is that tough times never last, but tough people do. This is certainly one of the toughest times that a lot of people around the world have probably ever experienced, and I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg. So we got to toughen up. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much. I know it's been a very long video. If you found this useful and you know, feel like it could provide sort of benefit to anybody else, please share it around. Again, I'd love to hear your comments on everything that I've just gone through. And until next time, peace, love and respect to all of you. Ciao.